Welcome to Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. It's like coffee with an analyst, or it could be whiskey with an analyst reading a spreadsheet, linking crime events, identifying a series, and getting the latest scoop on association news and training. So please don't be that analyst and join us as we define the law enforcement analysis profession one episode at a time.
Thank you for joining me. I hope many aspects of your life are progressing. My name is Jason Elder, and today it's IACA Election Coverage Day. And with me is Jonathan Sofley, who's running for IACA President. Jonathan, how are we doing?
I'm doing as great as I can. It is a Friday, and that means I have a weekend to relax. Fortunately, I'll be back in the office next week while all of you fine people who are at the conference are hobnobbing. So stop by and say hi to Jason if you see him.
Yes. I will be there. So come talk to me and maybe even get a selfie. How about that? So for those that are just clicking on this episode first, there's going to be two different episodes. We're going to release them at the same time. One's for Amanda, one's for Jonathan. I've given them the questions ahead of time. They will have a chance to answer them without a time limit, and we'll just go through there. So if you're listening to this, go see Amanda's and be informed, and obviously vote if you're an IACA member. All right, Jonathan, let's just start with an easy one. Can you give the listener a quick bio, where you're from, current job titles, committees you're part of, etc.?
Of course, Jason. Well, I am John Sofley. I am the former Vice President of Administration for TXLEAN. I finished my final 6 years co-managing that wonderful organization back at the end of June. Our new board has been brought on, and I am excited to see what they are going to do to move forward. So, a little bit about me. I am originally a native of North Carolina. I'm just saying that for you people over in the Carolinas, in case you want a North Carolina person. I'm from North Carolina originally. Born and raised, moved out to Texas in 2005 after I finished getting my bachelor's in criminal justice from Western Carolina University, and then my master's of public affairs from Western Carolina University in beautiful Cullowhee, North Carolina. If you've never been there, you should go see it. Beautiful mountain college town. So I have been working as a crime analyst since 2005. I started with the Austin Police Department. Then I went in 2010 to the Dallas Independent School District Police Department. For those of you who don't know, the Dallas ISD School District is the 14th largest school district in the country, and it is also the second largest school district in the state of Texas, unless it's dropped down to number 3. But basically, we're talking about a student and staff population of anywhere between 160,000 to 200,000 people in an almost 400 square mile area. I did that for a decade plus. I did crime analysis. I did police planning. I was a database administrator for the police department. I did everything. If there was a hat to wear that could be tied to crime analysis, like he can fix a printer, that was me. Then in 2021, I moved to the city of North Richland Hills to their police department because I was just looking to get back into the municipal field. I wanted to work in a municipal police department again. The school district was great. I learned so much about juvenile law and juvenile justice working there, but I missed the challenges that I got at a municipality. So I got hired on at North Richland Hills, and I've been there ever since. And I like to tell people that it was the best decision that I've ever made in my life. I have the most supportive bosses and command staff that I've ever worked with, and it is amazing. Now, if only I had the unlimited budget to go with their unlimited trust that they have in me, that would be great.
You can't have everything.
You can't have everything. You can't have everything. But so just a little bit more about me, just to help you learn about me. I've been married to my husband, TJ Norris. He's a professional artist. I've been married to him for 7 years. We've been together for 12. We are the proud adopted fathers of a rescue mastiff who is sitting beside me right now. Unfortunately, he is a very senior dog with arthritis. So if you hear something from him, I apologize, but he is my baby. And basically, we're just here living our American dream in our house with the dog in the car, but no picket fence, and a great job and great coworkers. So I think I answered your question. Did I give enough information? Oh no, you
Uh,
want committees. That's right.
yeah.
So so hey, my current job title is crime management analyst with North Richland Hills, and it's exactly what it sounds like. I'm the crime analyst, and they added management in there because it sounded fancy. And then for committees, I am a member of the mentoring committee. I think it's a great committee. I have been a mentor for several years now. I also was a mentor for IALEA for a while,
Hmm.
just throwing that out there. But yeah, I'm all about uplifting people and moving them forward. Like anyone who followed me and watched me with TXLEAN knows I'm all about uplifting people, and that's what I want to do. I don't like getting like recognition for myself because I always feel that recognition belongs to my team. It belongs to the people I work with. So when I talk about the trainings and things like that that I've done with TXLEAN for like other board members and all that are like, well, you should talk about how you did this in all this year. I'm like, well, I mean, I did, but I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't have the help of these other people carrying this part of the load. So it's a team effort. We all did it. And I want to let everyone below me know you did a great job. You're the one who call out. So that's really similar to what I want to be doing in the IACA. I
All
think
right.
we're actually going to like segue right into the next question with that. So why don't you go ahead and ask it?
All right. Why do you want to be the next IACA president?
So I want to be the next ISA president so that I can uplift our members and make them feel that the organization is one that they're proud of, one that they have ownership of. I want to make it something that is even better than what it is now. We've grown a lot since I joined the IACA for the first time in 2005. Just in the past couple years, I want to say we've taken our membership almost, is it almost 70% or so, Jason?
It's
Um,
7,000. I don't,
7,000. It
yes.
was like 4,000.
Hmm.
You know what they say about statistics. Yeah. We won't even do the full quote. There might be children listening. But that's a big increase. That's a huge increase from what we were and how we had been slowly growing. And we just had this bam, exponential growth. And while that's great, there's growing pains that go with that. And I think that's something that you've seen yourself, Jason, and other people have seen it. And how do we address these growing pains? And what do we do? My view of the IACA president is somebody who is going to come in with some ideas, but they're not going to force those ideas down everybody's throats. First off, you have to be able to work with the existing board that's already in place. If you come in and you want to make all these changes and you don't care what anybody else has to say, that's not going to go well. I think we've all seen that instance where a new boss comes in somewhere and they know what everything should be done, like how to do this, where to do this, when to do this, and everything falls apart because they don't get that buy-in. So that's what I want to do. I want to like get the buy-in with the rest of the board. I want to get the buy-in from the membership, and I want to be a figurehead that people can look at and come to for guidance, but without being like overreaching and overbearing and pushing something that's just my idea. That's why one of the key things that I always say is I want to hear from our members. I want to know what you want. I want to know what you need because our members are what make the organization, not the board. The board is just elected by the members to carry out the wishes of our membership.
It almost sounds like you're looking to do more delegation. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, delegation is actually it's a great word right there because one of the things that I want to do is a new strategic plan. And I think that's a good place to go ahead and segue to our next question because my answer is all about that.
All right, all right. Sorry, might have jumped the gun on you a little bit
No, no,
there.
no.
So the next question is, if elected, what will your priorities be?
So I keep saying to everyone, strategic plan, a strategic plan, strategic plan. I made a joke to you before we started. I'm just going to go ahead and say it again. I have a concept of a plan. just just give it a little bit of U.S. election humor right there.
Yeah.
But it's true though. I have a concept of a plan because I know what I want it to look like. I know what I kind of have laid out as things that I see as concerned. But the point of a strategic plan is to look at our organization as a whole and figure out what actually needs to be worked on. Maybe I think that the login method is wrong and we need to change that because it could be better. And then in the strategic plan, everyone's like, are you stupid? The login method is the best thing that we've ever seen in the world. I know that's like overly simplified,
Mm-hmm.
but that's kind of what it is. So I know that there's already initiatives in place. There's items that were already taken care of in the previous strategic plan. I've looked at the previous strategic plan and kind of combed through it and looked to see what do I think has actually worked from there? What do I think hasn't worked from there? But my idea is to bring in a group of people to sit on the strategic plan committee. And I want them to be people who are not necessarily already IACA volunteers. I want people with fresh outlooks, fresh perspectives, people who can come in for the first time as outsiders from, the inner workings of the IACA and looking from that outside to the inside. Okay, what are y'all doing here? What are things that we need to address? How can we do this best? And so I definitely want people from outside of the continental United States to be on that committee because we are international. So we need to have international people on that because basically it's going to be, I know I'm calling it a strategic plan, but at the same time, it's a steering committee. And like a steering committee is going to come in. They're going to take those and help push things out and implement things to make the organization better. Because we know the president is just 1 out of 5 members. The president is not a dictator. So if not all 5 members agree, at least that simple majority need to agree so that they can work together. I know that one of my priorities is also to find a balance for better transparency to help create a more professional organization. And you kind of asked about professionalism earlier, and like before we got onto the actual podcast. So being transparent, being professional. Like if you have to hide something, that's not very professional and it's not very transparent. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. But I also want to make sure that our members are more involved and they feel more of an ownership, especially those international members. Yes, I understand the bulk of our membership comes from the United States of America. That's amazing. That's great. But we still have so many people that are international members. I want to say it's about 30% over that. And I want to find ways that we can foster those relationships with them. I want to find ways to foster relationships with more academic organizations. That's one thing that we did with TXLEAN. When I was with TXLEAN, we started with Charleston State University, which is part of the Texas A&M system, and we have a great relationship with them. And then recently, we added a new relationship with the Sam Houston State University system, which is part of the Texas State University system. And if you don't understand why Texas has so many university systems, I'm not even finished with them. Just Google it. It was very interesting to me coming from the University of North Carolina system where it's all one thing or private school. But getting that strategic plan put together, figuring out what actually needs to change, what needs to be fixed, and what needs to be scrapped, that is my priority. And I know that sounds kind of vague, but I can say all day long the items that I want to see in that strategic plan. But if the research that comes out of it says that half of those aren't anything that need to be looked at all, what's the point of wasting people's times trying to put stuff together for something that we don't need to change? Does that make sense to you, Jason?
It does. It does. All right. Believe it or not, we're allowed to disagree. right? You might think one way, I think the other. And I guess with that said, are there IACA decisions that you wish were handled differently?
So in the questions you gave, you kind of prompted out 3 areas, which I thought were actually, maybe it was more than 3, a couple of areas that
Yeah. So
I
yeah.
agreed with. I thought they were great questions. It is 3. I need better glasses. Sorry, everybody. I want to talk about just those 3
Okay.
because anything that I would have talked about separately would have fallen within one of these 3 items. So let's start with the business meeting question.
Mhm.
So I'll read it out for y'all, everybody. Jason had put in here, they were wanting to know about the decision to move the conference business meeting to the very end of the conference on Friday. I know that some people don't like that. Some people do like that. I have some thoughts. As somebody who's put on conferences over the years, finding a spot for the business meeting that will get the most people in attendance as possible is difficult. If you try to put it in the middle of the week where a class could go, you have people complain that, oh, well, I could have been learning in this time, but you put this business meeting here. If you put it at the end, people complain, oh, well, I have a flight to catch. So I'm just going to say, you're scheduling your flight. If you know that the conference ends at noon and you're booking a flight at noon, you've chosen to skip part of that. That's kind of on you. Caveat, sometimes there's places that only have 1 or 2 flights a day, or like an international flight that's only going to leave once a day. I get it. It's unfortunate, but it happens. It's up to us as members to make sure that if we want to attend the business meeting, that we make sure that we do our schedules appropriately to attend that business meeting. And maybe that is a controversial view, but we're all adults.
So
And on top of that, I will say I have no problem looking at moving the business meeting to a different time or day. Not at all. My suggestion actually is for the conference committee in their survey to put something out asking people, when would you prefer to see the annual business meeting? And whatever gets the most comments in the survey, make that the time for next year and see how that goes. That's kind of what we do with TXLEAN. We move it around based off of the feedback that we get. I think
yeah.
that's pretty fair.
Yeah. I know for next week it was announced that it's not even going to be online. I think historically they've also run them virtually as well, the business meeting.
So
And
I have an answer for why that is. And it was actually a discussion that I had with Christian because we were talking about the business meeting in itself, because I was hoping to be able to attend it virtually because of the issue with last year's conference. And the issue is the cost that the hotel wanted to charge to let them stream it, or even let the other 2 board members zoom into the meeting, was exorbitant. Like, I want to say it may have had 5 zeros before the decimal point. It was ridiculous. It was not a valid or good use of the IACA's money. And I think that if they had spent all that money, that would have been worse than saying, hey, we're going to do the presentation, we're going to take questions. After this is over, we're going to run back to our rooms, because once they're in their hotel rooms, they can Zoom all they want to have the business meeting. So it is unfortunate, but I cannot blame the board for that, or the conference committee. It's just the way that everything fell with what's going on. And I'll talk about a little bit more of that in just a little bit, because you have a question specifically about the Vegas conference.
Yeah, well, let's just go to that, and I guess I'll read the questions. I wanted to leave that question out open-ended, and then I had the 3 sub questions beforehand. So you asked the first one, and I'll get the next 2. So then the next one is the decision to not report the 2023 conference shortfall.
So for that one, I'm just going to say that is slightly an incorrect statement. It's not that it has not been reported. I know of at least one board meeting that I attended this year over Zoom where it was brought up and discussed to the membership that was in attendance. So because of that, I'm going to say it's not true that it was not disclosed. Well, was it disclosed in the best way possible? Meh.
Do you remember when that was?
It was a little bit earlier in this year. Full disclosure, I have known about this issue since December. TXLEAN obviously was the co-host of last year's conference. So they kept me as the main TXLEAN contact for that in the loop so that we kind of knew what was going on with it because we had a contract with the IACA. So they wanted to make sure that they were very clear about what was going on. I had discussions with Annie about it. I had discussions with Kristen about it, and I had discussions with Mary about it. So while I knew, I was able to brief the TXLEAN board and let them know what was going on. But it would have been unethical for me to call you up and be like, Jason, I've got some tea to spill. That just would have been unethical. Plus, they were working on it. So I have some notes about it. So some of the issues that I know of at the Glass Cactus event, the Gaylord said they had no way to itemize a bill for us. I don't know about you, but I've never seen an organization as big as the Gaylord say, oh, well, we know you had an event with food and drink, but we have no way to itemize it. So, as the kids would say, I call cap. Somebody looked at someone and said that was cringe, and my goal has been made. Secondly, I know that the food and beverage budget was an issue. They allowed people to register up to the very last minute. They didn't have caps for people for the luncheon. Same with the two events. You had people that were able to go to those events, and that food and beverage ended up getting higher and higher because there were more people than were originally planned for. And then I also know that the plan for the internet, for the Wi-Fi that was originally sold by the Gaylord, that they said would be more than enough to cover everything, was not. And on day one, they had to go ahead and authorize additional funds to keep the Wi-Fi up and working. There are other items. It's not my place to talk about those. I know that the board is going to be talking about that at the annual meeting. They'll be doing it during the closing ceremonies in their presentation there. So I'm going to let them talk about it. I'm going to let them explain their thoughts, and let's leave it to the membership to decide, do they think they did the right thing or the wrong thing? Could have been a little bit more transparent? Sure. But without knowing every single fact and detail behind it, I can't tell you how I would have made it more transparent other than maybe putting something out to the membership earlier on saying, hey, we had a great conference. Unfortunately, we have an issue with the billing for it. We will let you know when we have more information, because I believe it took 6 months of negotiations, and I want to say they went to arbitration for this to get the balance lowered. So yeah, I would love to see more transparency with it, but I'm not sure where that is without all the details. Maybe you have a suggestion or idea, Jason, for that. But it's one of those things where we can talk about it all day long about what we would have done, but without knowing all the facts behind it, we're just kind of guesstimating. So that's kind of where I fall on that. I do know this year they have been very careful with the budget. They capped the lunch and learn. They capped the registration. They have a wait list. We'll talk about that in a minute too. And not a bad thing. And they're just so far, from what I can see on the front end, learning the lessons that they learned last year from the mistakes that happened. And that's something that whoever gets elected into the president position, that I hope that they sit down and they also learn those lessons, make sure that they know what happened here, how to do this, how to do that, and make sure that we continue moving forward without continuing the mistakes of our past.
All right. And then the last one of the three is the decision to have the conferences in Vegas, given some departments, like the one that you work for, will not let its analysts attend.
Yes, yes. I wrote a statement for this year, and it says, I know this answer. Hi, it's me, an analyst that can't go to Vegas this year due to politics and funding. So, yes, when they first announced, I want to say it was 2 years ago at this point, that they're going back to Vegas, I point blank looked at them and I said, why the insert colorful language here? There could be children listening.
Yeah.
Are we going back to Vegas so soon? Well, they were very candid with me about it. And everyone that I've talked to that has asked the same question, they've also been very candid with. Not candid, candid. Jeez. I'm very pretty at times. So, if you remember, the last Vegas was during COVID. That was 2021. So, obviously, it did not have the best turnout. I would have loved to go, but I had just started at my new agency like a month or two before then, and I was not ballsy enough to look at my captain and go, hey, Mickey, will you send me to Vegas after a month and a half? Because he would have told me what I could go do with myself. And it would not have been appropriate for children. So they didn't meet the obligations of the contract. And because they didn't meet the obligations of the contract, they had two options: return to Vegas very soon and meet the rest of the obligations, or take a hefty penalty. So I don't know about you, but I would rather they go back to Vegas again and try Vegas 2.0 versus paying out a lot of extra money, because we already had an issue with the conference in Chicago, and that was due to contracts and the hotel changing hands and the union costs for things. Chicago was a loss, unfortunately. Vegas, they didn't meet the contract obligation, but that one wasn't a loss because we're going back this year. So ask any board member when you see them. They will tell you directly why they're back in Vegas this year. They were not too terribly happy about having to go back to Vegas either. But here's the thing. If I had a different city council and we hadn't had a $680,000 budget cut last year, I actually might have been able to go to Vegas if I presented. But it wasn't. I wasn't going to go this year. I already knew it. I had been told, like, don't bother. You're not going to go. I was like, okay, boss, that's fine. I like being gainfully employed. So, like I said, I'm also wary. I was very wary that other cities would do the same. And I flat out told that to a couple of the board members. I've talked to it about the TXLEAN board members. I was like, I'm very concerned. I really hope that this is successful. Like, I don't want to see it fail again. And Jason, my hat tasted very good with the mustard that I put on it, because I had to eat my hat. I had to eat my hat because I said I was a negative, like, Nelly. I was like, I don't think they're going to get enough people. And this was like at the very beginning, and they were like, we have 200 people registered. I was like, oh, God, no. My hat tasted great after I put some mustard on it. I ate it.
Yeah.
I admitted I was wrong. They have the full 800 people, Jason. 800 people. That's even bigger than the debacle last year, which, if we hadn't had the billing issue, would have been the best conference ever. So us Texas people are going to be a little salty that the Vegas one was bigger now. So if you see someone from Texas, give them some love. You know, Texas likes everything to be bigger, and there'll be some sad people. This is where I put in a plug for the TXLEAN president, Heather Lane. She has exactly 200 really cool looking armadillo with the Texas flag in front of the Las Vegas buttons to hand out. So there's 800 people, 200 buttons. You do the math. Go get your button from Heather on day one. Heather, you're welcome. Heather and I have known each other for 14 years, so it's nice. But they have a wait list for the conference. That's amazing. Like, what's going to happen if someone's on the wait list and they fly out there thinking they might get in? I'm going to feel bad for that person, but like, that's great. And I did ask the board very directly. I said, regardless if I get elected to the board, I said, I want to know what are you going to do to make sure that what happened last year doesn't happen again, and that the having to go back to somewhere because we don't meet a contract doesn't happen again, especially in places where it's possible that we might not be able to fill people because people aren't going to want to send you there. So they promised me that they are looking at very thorough RFPs in places that people are less likely to get denied for. So for all of you hoping to go to Honolulu, I'm so sorry. No one will go to Honolulu. But who knows? Maybe you'll get to go back to Cleveland. But like there's a lot of other great places that we could have conferences at. There's Nashville. You have the DC area again. And it doesn't have to be over at like a Gaylord property. There's tons of places in the DC area that can host a conference and look at it. It could be somewhere in Nova. It could be up in Baltimore. You could look at Pittsburgh or Philadelphia, Salt Lake City. Sorry for everybody who likes to drink. Like Portland, Seattle. Like there's a lot of great places that we can look at to have conferences that aren't necessarily the sexy place to go, but it's not a bad place to go. And I say that as somebody who loves Pittsburgh.
Oh.
So I love Pittsburgh. I think it's a great city. I would love to move there if I could, but I have a great job here. But Pittsburgh's a great place. I actually went to a MAPS conference in Pittsburgh back in like 2008. I want to say it was like the very last one. And it was a great place to have a conference. And I know that's kind of a tangent, but I'm just saying, sometimes the sleeper cities are good cities to look at. I think you could agree. I mean, we could always come to Tallahassee.
Oh, yeah. Well, you said Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. You know I'm a PA boy, so that obviously piqued my interest. But
that wasn't even pandering right there. That's just me genuinely loving Pittsburgh. Take that how you might. The Pennsylvania people, vote for me. I love Pittsburgh. But yeah, so I was very concerned, but I'm also ecstatic that it looks like it's going to be great. I know that there's a little complaints that they cut back on the events and all that, but I think they're trying something new. I think they want to see about saving money, and they wanted to make sure that if it did have a lower attendance, that they wouldn't get in the same situation. So enjoy game night. If I was coming, I'd be bringing some awesome games. I'm a big like board and card game person. So I'd be like, here, let me bring this limited edition game that you've never heard of, but it's super easy to play in 27 easy steps.
All right, very good. So let's talk about voter turnout for a second. So we talked about the IACA now being 7,000 members, and yet I think at last year's election, I think 300 members voted. So is low voter turnout for the IACA an issue?
Low voter turnout is an issue for the entire United States of America. Probably every rack. I know it's an issue with TXLEAN, and it is an issue with the IACA. Unfortunately, I don't have a good answer on how to get people to be more active in voting. Unfortunately, we are not Australia, and we do not have mandatory voting that we require everybody to vote for and do. So I don't have a good answer for that one. But I don't think that that's a wrong answer. I don't think it's a bad answer. I think that's something that we as an organization need to look at and figure out, what are we doing wrong that people don't want to vote? What are we doing wrong that people don't want to be involved? And so that comes back to wanting to have more involvement and ownership of our members. I think if we find ways to get our members more involved in the forums, more involved in volunteer positions when they come up, more involved in just the general networking of the organization, the training, talking to each other, talking to the people in their racks, and then feeling a pride and ownership of the IACA, I think we could get more people to vote. But at the same time, people in general, we're lazy. I mean, even the most driven person, there is something that person just does not want to do. and they are lazy when it comes to that. And it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to be lazy. It's just a bad thing to not care at all, because I am a lazy voter sometimes, but I care, and I make sure I look at all the candidates. I voted, I think, in every single IACA election that I've been able to, and I've looked at the candidates. I have looked at their platforms. I have gone in and I have voted on day one, because I know if I don't vote on day one, I will forget about it. That's because I'm a little lazy with some things. It's like when you put off dusting and you're like, then you get to the next week and you're like, I have to dust. And then finally it's like a month later and you're like, I have to dust today or else I'm going on vacation tomorrow. And then you don't dust because you're going on vacation. It's the same with voting. People were like, I'll vote tomorrow. I'll vote next week. We just keep putting it off. We keep putting it off, keep putting it off. I think maybe the answer is a shorter voting period, like where there's more of a fire under people to get them out there. So, you know what? That is something I would like the strategic plan to look into, is a voter turnout as one of the line items under involvement, because I think that that is an issue that we have. It's bad how small of a vote out that we got, and I hate that. I hate that in general, because there's not really a reason.
All right. So the membership dues, $25, been $25 since the inception in 1990. Given inflation, that's about $60 in today's standards. Do you think the membership dues should be increased? If so, why should it increase, and how much should they increase? And if not, why should they stay the same?
So I think this is a poison pill, and I'm going to tell you why. Regardless what we do, somebody will be upset. If we raise the dues, people will be livid. If we don't raise the dues, people will be livid. If we dropped the dues by $5, people would be livid. You said it very clearly earlier. Let me quote you. Believe it or not, it is okay to disagree. You think one way and I think another. And that's how it's coming with dues. But I think it's a poison pill, because you're going to get the answer wrong regardless what you do. And you're going to ostracize people and you're going to make people mad. Personally, I had to pay all of my dues out of my own pocket for years. And for a while, I was paying IACA. I was paying IALEA. And when it was around, I was paying IALEA. And that was a lot of money for me to be paying out of my own pocket when I am a single income family and I was not making nearly as much as I am at this point in my career. So it was hard. There were times where I had to decide, do I want to be a member of IALEA? Do I want to be a member of IALEA? Do I want to be a member of IACA? And I chose, and I had to choose. So sometimes I would drop membership in one. Sometimes I drop it in two. A couple times I dropped it in all three, just because my organization didn't pay for it. I had to pay it all out of my own pocket, and I just couldn't afford to at the time. And there's a lot of people out there, I think, that are like that. Now I'm lucky. If I asked, I know that my agency would pay my dues for TXLEAN, and they would pay my dues for IALEA. But I get my IACA comped because I'm on the mentoring committee, and I also, at least until the next billing cycle, I'm comped under TXLEAN just because I was a board member at the time we did the renewal, and I managed the training committee and all that. And it was really the first time we kind of pushed board members off that had been there for so long. And I was talking to Heather. I was like, okay, are y'all going to send me an invoice for $50? And she said, no, we didn't know what to do. And since you're still like, I'm not on the training committee anymore, but I guess I'm a consultant, if you would say, because anything they have, I let them ask me and all that. They're like, just because you did this for so long, we're just going to push it off till next year so we don't have to figure it out this year. And I was like, score. I was like, $50 in my pocket. That's like one trip to get tacos for two. And that's kind of sad that that's actually about the price that it costs to get tacos for two these days. But I do know that it can be a burden for people, especially newer analysts who are on the much lower end of the spectrum. We know that there's issues with pay and pay disparity for people, along with inflation in itself. The other kind of like concern that I have is like our members in other countries where they make a lot less money. I know that we do have discounted memberships for, and this is from the IAC website, we offer discounts to individuals applying from UN designated developing countries, small island developing states, least developed country, or landlocked developing country. And I believe it's $5 a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's great. The other thing is that if we raise, let's say we raise the dues to $60, that means all the racks have to raise their dues to offset that cost. Right now, a rack pays $15 to the IACA per member that they have. I know some racks offer the option not to take IACA membership. I guess that level would stay the same. But let's say that it raises and that goes up to $30 a person or $35 a person from the rack. That means with like TXLEAN, we recently 2 years ago raised our dues from $25 to $50, and that was through member input. In fact, we actually had offered $40 a year and said, if you let us raise it to $40 a year, we promise that we won't raise dues or look into this for like another X number of years. I want to say it's maybe like it was like 3 to 4 years, but that was to help cover our operating costs. And if we had to change from $15 to say $35, that drastically reduces our operating costs. Plus, our student members are only $25, so we have to raise a student member. And so you could lose people joining RAC because they're like, well, it's $100 to join my RAC, or it's $60 to join the IACA. Maybe I'll just join the IACA and just not bother with my regional committee anymore, like regional organization anymore. And I don't think anybody wants to see that. I think the regional organizations are very important to have because they give a lot of localized networking and training to the analysts in the states that they reside in. I also know that in the previous board strategic plan, they looked at this. And that was actually one of the concerns that came up from the strategic plan was losing RAC membership. So it's unfortunate that other training costs have risen. And I know we don't really offer as much of a discount to those developing countries for training. And maybe that's something that we should look at as a way to kind of offset the costs for them, but it's only fair to raise prices where we need to. Now, if we did a strategic plan again and we looked at it and it looked like we should raise the dues, I would ask for the membership to vote on it. And whatever they decided would be what we would do. Because like I said, it's about our members. It's about what they want and what they need. And it's about the board implementing the wishes that the membership has to the best of their ability.
So the executive board reports they work more than the expected 10 hours per week. And in fact, two of the board members aren't going to be at next week's conference, and Rachel is going to be there now, but it was thought that even Rachel was going to miss. So that would have really left the board shorthanded at the conference. And given the amount of hours that they work, one idea would be to expand the number of executive board members. And mentioned IACA's 5, IALEA's 11 with fewer members. So what are your thoughts on expanding the IACA board?
Well, first, I'm glad that you already had the update that Rachel was coming, because the first thing I had was, first, a quick correction. There will be 3 members in attendance. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, 2 members are not able to come. It is for their own personal, private medical reasons, and that is not our place to talk about or to assume or whatever. I know at least one of them has told everybody exactly what it was, but but that's their private stuff. For those of you not in the United States of America, we have HIPAA, and it protects people's medical records and information. But so the workload can be much more than 10 hours a week. I know with TXLEAN, sometimes I would put in 10 hours a week. Sometimes I would put in 30 hours a week. Sometimes I would sit there and I'd be like, oh my God, I have nothing to do. I'm completely caught up. And then the next day, I would be like, oh crap, why did I say that? And I know that part of it falls with how the season is going. With conference time, it's going to be go, 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 go. There's tons of stuff to do. There's a lot to get done. Other times of the year, it's a little slow. But that kind of like average 10, 15 hours a week, based off of my work with TXLEAN, that seems correct. And from talking to the board members that I have, which is all of them, they agree. And maybe there's ways to streamline that better with 5 members. But here's the thing. I am all for getting 2 more board members. I think that is an excellent idea. So I'm 100% behind a push to add 2 more board members. I know that we have 15 dedicated committee chairs that are already assisting the existing board. And beneath them, there are around 100-ish volunteers helping in day-to-day aspects. I know that another idea is to put in a paid position. I'd rather see 2 board members over a paid position. So before I talk about the board members, let me tell you why I don't think we should do a paid position. And it's just because there's a lot of concerns that come with that. How are they going to be paid? Are they going to be a 1099 employee? Are they going to be a W-2? Who manages? What are the checks and balances? Do we give them benefits or do we not? Where is that position going to be located? Is that position going to be located in Kansas? But are we going to hire someone in California? And if we do that, how do we deal with that? Because California has much different labor laws than Kansas does. There's a lot of legal items for that there. Like, let's say, are we paying them with a grant? And they're in charge of the grant. There's a conflict of interest right there. How is everything monitored with metrics and all that? So there's a lot of moving parts in that I think can be avoided by just adding 2 additional board members. Regardless, either way will cause the IACA to have to change the charter. And that's going to take a little time, and that will incur a little bit of legal cost because we have to make sure that we do it correct. But yes, 100%, I think we need 2 additional board members. I think that would help carry out that load. In fact, one of the board members that I would like to see added would be an international board member. And just like with the treasurer, where it says you must be a U.S. citizen with a social security number, I would say the international board member must not be a U.S. citizen and must not reside in the U.S. That way, we're getting someone who truly is international and maybe not just like an expat who's working in like the United Kingdom, because that kind of defies the point of having an international board member if we just put another American there. I'm actually kind of curious. What do you think about that idea, Jason?
Putting an international person on the board?
Yeah, like having that person would be over all international aspects.
Well, I always thought the International Outreach Committee, that chair should be a board member.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start.
That's been my thought for years. And so I agree with what you're saying about trying to ensure international representation on the board.
Yeah, and one thing that I had talked to Rachel about, because, Rachel's over membership, but she's also over all these international aspects. And Rachel had said to me at one point, I think that if we had an international board member along with the Symposium International Committee, that they should be over international membership as well, because that could take about 30% of that workload off of the membership committee itself right there, because there's different ways of working on it. I think that's all great things to look at in a strategic plan as well. Now, the other board member that would be added, that's where I'm like, I have a concept of a plan. In my mind, I have 2 kind of ideas that I think about. I'm not sure if it's necessarily what would be best in the end after all the research is done, but my thinking is either having a board member that is over all training, including the conference, minus the international symposium, leaving that with the international guy or gal. And then, so it'll be all training, conference, certification, and roll that all into one area, because I kind of feel that those 3 areas all mesh together really well. The other kind of idea would be to have some sort of maybe like technology type board member that is solely in charge of the website, the forums, other kind of technological things that need to be done, so that it kind of pulls that all under one person And I mean, that would give like Manny and Jennifer Loper, I think, even more breathing room, because they would be they'd have someone above them that was specifically above them in that role to help like carry that weight load that they have. So that's really kind of what I'm looking. But like I said, either way, the charter has to get updated. That's going to be a process in itself. And if any of you listening have ideas of who you think, well, not who, but like what type of board position should be added, let me know, because I want to know. Like, these are just the things that come out of my head, but they're not necessarily the right ones at times. That's why I have to talk to you. That's why I have to figure out what you really want and what you really need. So, Jason, I'll expect an email by the end of next week detailing exactly what two board member positions you think that we should have. Do it in triplicate and single space, please.
I'll get right on it. All right. So you highlighted a little bit already, but how would you make the IACA more international?
So you're right. I steamrolled those two questions all into one. There really wasn't a way for me not to do that.
Mhm.
But definitely having a dedicated international board member. It's great that we have Rachel and that she's international, but she's the membership vice president. And I think she's doing a great job. But even she has said it would be great to like spread this out against someone else. And
Mhm.
so that's why I think having one of those two board positions being dedicated just to international members, being someone who is not a U.S. citizen, who does not reside in the United States of America, like, I think that is the best option, because then you can have that person who is from outside of the U.S. Maybe it's someone from Canada, maybe be someone from Mexico or Latin America. That'd be amazing. Maybe we could get someone from Africa. Like, that would be great. I would love to see people coming from places that there's no reason why people shouldn't expect someone to come from there, other than just we've not seen it yet. And it's time to see that. So I think with that international board member could help build that community, help them build that ownership in the IACA. It could help them build different platforms for it. Like I said in our Q&A session with the elections committee, one of the things that I looked at and I'd like to see implemented with the mentoring committee is finding more ways to get international mentees and mentors. I know that we have a couple international mentee requests, but at this time we don't have mentors for them. We might have a Spanish speaking mentor, but they're not a Spanish speaking mentor from the correct area to actually help this person. So I think that the work that we can do with them would be great, because it will bring that ownership, it'll bring more involvement and activity. I do know that there was an issue for a little bit with the forums where the language would not change, but I got an email a little earlier before we started saying that that issue should be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that should be a big help as well.
All right. And then should the IACA collaborate more with other analytical groups like IALEA?
100%. 100%. I know that it has been brought up to ILEA. I know that when the board goes to these other conferences and they get our name out there and they have a table near them, they're like, hey, it'd be great if we did some sort of joint training and all that. But the problem is the other organization has to be willing to cooperate and to collaborate. And that's just the challenge in general. Is it something that I would love to try to spearhead? 100%. 100%. I think it'd be amazing to see a joint IACA IALEA conference. That would be great. I think it would be great to see IACA push like fiat training. I don't know if you've ever done the fiat training
I
through
used
IALEA.
I used to be an instructor.
Okay, yeah. So I did the fiat training and I did the alpha group training when I first became an analyst in the first year. And I still use the basics that I learned in both of those classes. Like, they still speak to me. They still help me in my day-to-day work. And so I don't see a problem with us saying, hey, there's going to be a fiat track that will be at the IACA conference here. And maybe IALEA can be like, hey, we have just a pure crime analysis track that we're going to be doing right over here in Vancouver next year. Like, I think that'd be great. And then just, hey, welcome to Pittsburgh to the IACA IALEA conference. There's a lot of moving parts with that, though, at the same time. Like, how do you deal with revenue? How do you deal with expenditures? Who's responsible for what? So it's not something that's going to necessarily come up right away with whoever gets elected in the office if they're able to do it. If they are, kudos to them. It'll be some that I probably would have delegated.
Mhm.
But yeah, 100%. We need to be more involved with other groups. For a while, TXLEAN had looked at partnering with IALEAP before IALEAP had to fold to bring training to police planners and analysts in the state of Texas. And unfortunately, they folded and we weren't able to. But it is something that we've looked at. And we've talked with IALEA, the Lone Star chapter. We had talked about maybe doing a joint conference with them, but I believe they decided to move forward with their first conference, which I believe they just had. Just one second, Jason, sorry. Which they just had. And so we didn't end up getting that pulled together. So there's always little bumps in the road, but there's no harm putting out the olive branch and trying to get the other people to join in with you. In the end, if they don't want to and you've tried, you've done what you can do.
So some feel the IACA is an association just for training and networking. Some feel that the IACA should be influencers on such things as university curriculum, analyst salary, and promotion structure. And even I've heard police race relations. What do you think the role is of the IACA?
So I'm just going to read what the bylaws say. International Association of Crime Analysts Incorporated is an all-volunteer, nonprofit organization dedicated to training, networking, and professional opportunities to crime and intelligence analysts around the world. We deliver these services in a cost-effective manner. That's what our bylaws say. I believe we're doing what our bylaws say. So, moving on to the next part of that question, though, should we be influencers in university curriculum? Geez, sorry, everybody. I'm getting over bronchitis, so I'm not 100%, so please forgive me for some of my blunders. So, I do know that in the past and present, various board members have been consulted by universities on what content should be included. With TXLEAN, we have talked with our two university partners and we've discussed areas that are important for their certification programs that they do, and it's been very beneficial and useful to us. I know that several of the current and former board members teach academically in one way or another. Personally, myself, I've been offered several opportunities, but it's not something that I have passion in doing. It's not something I want to do. I don't want to go teach in a college, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's very admirable for the people who do. But for me, that's not what I want to do. It's not what I feel is the way for me to give back. I have, however, recommended other people. So like with Sam Houston State University, when they asked us, like, hey, I just have a master's degree in public affairs. Yeah, I've done this job for, I believe it was 17 or 18 years when we had the first conversation with them. I said, but you know who would be awesome to come teach for you? Dr. Andrew Dasher of the MD Anderson Medical Center Police Department. He is amazing. You should talk to him. And I don't know if Drew has forgiven me or not for that, but like that's kind of how I feel on that side. Like I think it's great for us to do it. I think it's great for us to tell them, hey, this is what we see, this is what we need, because there's not really a point for universities to come up with like a crime analysis program if what they're teaching isn't what actually needs to be used in practice. So it's really cool to see how some things are, but I don't need all of my classes to be like applied like statistical theory when in reality I just need to know how to do a percent change half the time to make my chief happy. And I hate to simplify it like that, but it just makes it makes it so easy for the example. But yeah, there's no problem with us doing that. I think we should be more involved with academia. That's one of the points that I pride myself on for TXLEAN. It's part of what I felt was a great legacy for me to leave is starting up those connections. Alex got us in with Charleston State, but then I built the relationship. Same with Sam Houston. That was brought in by Drew, and then I built up that relationship after he made the introductions and everything. And so like I said earlier, I always work with a team. My team are the people who are the ones that I want to give the shout out to, not myself. But sometimes you have to talk about yourself. So then for the next part, like analyst salary, I think we would all love if we could go to our chief and say, well, the IACA says I should be making $123,000 a year without your chief laughing you out of the office and telling you to go away. Unfortunately, the way government works, and those of you in the private sector, you have a lot more leeway than those of us in the public sector do. But we have to deal with market surveys. We have to deal with comparisons to other cities. We have to be compared to people who are analysts, but they do something different than we do. Like a great example, Diana Smith, the South Lake analyst, she's the treasurer for TXLEAN. Me and her are the best of friends. I love her to death. But what she does in South Lake as an analyst is completely different than what I do in North Richland Hills. What Alex does in Burleson is completely different than what Heather Lane does in Grand Prairie. And then what you do, Jason, is completely different from what I do. Just like what Amanda does is different from what I do. We all have our own kind of flavor that we work in. And unfortunately, those comparisons aren't really valid, but we're stuck with them. I'd love to see more of an input, but as long as we have to deal with market studies, it's not something that's feasible, at least for the public sector analysts. I know that's not necessarily the answer people want to hear. And then for like promotional structure, I don't even know where to start on that. I am a sole analyst in my department. The promotion for me is, am I getting any raise this year? And then it's, okay, are they raising my salary range? Like if they only raise my salary range 2%, but give a 4% raise to the city, I get 2% based on where I'm at. I can't be like, the IACA says that I should be a super senior analyst, and this is the range. Because again, my chief will throw something heavy at my head, and I don't think he would miss, since it's been the second time I asked him about that. He already gave me a dirty look when I talked to the city manager about it. And then like police race relations, all that, I'm not even sure where we would fall on that. That seems more of a standards type thing to be dealt with by like CALEA or TALEA. That's the Texas version, for those of you who don't know.
Okay. All right. So what would winning the IACA president election mean to you?
It'd mean a lot. It would mean that I would have the opportunity to represent even more people than I have with TXLEAN. It'd mean I'd have the chance to meet more analysts across the world, regardless if it's in person at a conference or on a Zoom call. I would be able to help bring the voice of our members onto the board and be able to be their advocate, where I can come in and say, all right, well, I was talking with Jason Elder, and he has these concerns. I think this is a valid concern. These other two, I told him, I said, Jason, now you're just being silly, but we'll talk about this one right here. And he was like, okay, that sounds good to me. I'm like, what can we do about this? This is an issue. What should we do? How should we do this? What do we need to kind of figure out to make this a more workable item here? And so that's really what I want. I want to be the president who is the leader of the organization that people can look up to, but that people also know I can go tell them anything. I can ask any question. I can present any request, and they're not going to tell me, well, that's not part of my agenda. That's not part of my vision. They're going to say, that's great. Tell me more. Like, how can I make you feel like you've been heard? How can I make you feel like we see you and that we are listening to you and that we are making the changes that need to be made to make this an even better organization than it already is.
All right.
Yeah.
So final question. So I'm going to leave you with the last word like I normally do on my shows. So what are your final words for the listener? And maybe do you have a campaign slogan?
I do have a campaign slogan. Can you guess what it is? Because I've talked about it a lot. Hint, it's on the photo and on my LinkedIn post that I did earlier this week. He's not Googling fast enough. So together we can make a difference. That's the key thing that I give people. Together we can make a difference. Because like I said, I want to be the president to represent you, not to push my own ideas or agendas, but to push items that I believe in strongly, but that I have backed up through my strategic plan as items to actually work on. And so I want to get you to vote for me. I want you to remember, hey, I remember talking to John. He was pretty awesome. I think he'd be a great IACA president. I hear that he wants to bring us to be more involved. He wants us to be telling the board what we want. And that's where I'm at. I'm at the point where if I win this, I can give that to all of our members. I can be, hey, Jason, we're having a board meeting next week. Don't forget to sign up. Come, tell us your questions. Ask us the hard stuff. Put us under the microscope. Make sure we're transparent. Make sure we're being fair. That's why I said with the strategic plan that I want to do, I want to have all external people. I want to have people who aren't currently on committees because we're going to be looking at those committees. So I don't need the person in charge of the training committee to be on the strategic plan committee while we're looking at the training committee. That being said, Kyle, you do an amazing job. I love you to death. Thank you for all the hard work you do for the IACA. You were just an easy target for the example. But still, I think that's fair. It keeps everything to be more transparent because you don't have people looking at that. So while the entire board would be part of that process, if we are looking at a certain board member and their committees, that board member will have no say about what's going on with their committees. So let's say I'm overtraining. I don't get to have an input or try to steer people for that. I have to step back. I have to recuse myself to keep it fair and to keep it ethical and to keep it transparent. And I want to have those meetings as public as possible. If possible, I'd love to see the meetings actually transcribed immediately so that they can get posted out in a faster manner. Want to just see our membership thrive even more than they already are and just become more involved. And like I said, I want them to be involved and have ownership in the IACA. So I ask each of you to vote for me for the IACA president. Regardless if you vote for me or not, go vote. That's all I can ask you to do is to vote. Preferably for me, I have a really cool shirt that has shirts on it that I will wear for you next time I see you if I'm elected. Jason has seen this shirt and he can tell you how magical it is.
All right, Jonathan, thank you so much for running for president. I know it's a lot of work to do all this stuff. Thank you for your time. Good luck in the election, and you be safe.
Thank you, Jason, and I appreciate everything you do to get our messages out there and to help the IACA be better. You do a great job. So I know not everybody tells you that they appreciate you, but I do. So thank you so much, and thank you for having me today.
Thank you for making it to the end of another episode of Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. You can show your support by sharing this and other episodes found on our website at www.leapodcasts.com. If you have a topic you would like us to cover or have a suggestion for our next guest, please send us an email at leapodcasts@gmail.com. Till next time, analysts, keep talking.